Wait! When did the Great Reset begin? Could it have been under Barack Obama in 2008? Hello there, you 5.8 million awakening wonders, you great souls, part of the unitary beauty that underscores all reality. Thank you for joining me on this video. Thank you for joining me on this quest. Thank you for educating me on the truth as you understand it. I will do my best to reciprocate. Today we're talking about the Great Reset and how this project came about. How people's trust in democracy, particularly in the United States, has been eroded ever since the 2008 financial crash. How the people were betrayed under the Barack Obama administration. An administration for which many people, and I include myself in this, felt a great deal of what we now have to acknowledge was cockeyed optimism. The Great Reset is understood to be a project that is about centralizing and concretizing global power, centralized power. Institutions such as the WHO, WEF, events like Davos are assumed to be the kind of public face of the sometimes presumably nefarious organizations. Now, we're not interested in conspiracy theories, are we? But we want to know about conspiracy facts. We want to know if certain events are taking place that allow already powerful institutions, corporations, government, private, public organizations to become more powerful at whose expense? Your expense. How are we ever going to arrest that? If there is a project that has the support of the most powerful individuals and institutions in the world, what's the only way that we're ever going to stop them? Tell me now, what's the only way we're ever going to stop them? In this conversation with Matt Taibbi, we got into it. Matt Taibbi's a legit journalist. He's not interested in talking about some hocus pocus bullshit from the nether regions of the internet. He needs solid facts that can be reported and verified by multiple sources, and that's exactly what we're going to deliver you right now. Stay to the end of this conversation because it's fantastic. You're going to feel even smarter by the end of it, and let me know what you think in the comments.
Does this suggest that when people have ideas and a sense that there is a sort of there are a set of globalist entities that have a kind of loose project to disempower and disenfranchise ordinary people in very real and sometimes explicit ways, i.e. the WEF's now famous mantra, you will own nothing and you will be happy. When people see that play out, when they see that, you know, centralized hedge funded property development firms are acquiring property, when they see that the agriculture from Sri Lanka to the Netherlands is being bankrupted by top-down edicts to change their farming practices in ways that are presented as being ecologically friendly, but close examination reveals that, you know, by his fruits shall thee know him. If the result of an edict is it bankrupts farmers, allowing centralized agricultural interests to acquire land cheaply, then isn't it possible, likely even, that that was always the intention? And there's more and more people, I've noticed this from our audience who, you know, I grow increasingly enamored with, that they are willing to see the connections between what's happening in Sri Lanka, what's happening in the Netherlands, what happened in Canada with the trucker movement. The ordinary people are being pushed to the degree willing to believe in ideas that at this point don't seem so conspiratorial. When you see situations gaming out the same way in countries as distant and diverse as Sri Lanka and Canada, the UK, America, that it starts to seem that if there isn't a plot or a conspiracy, there is an identifiable tendency. What in your work, Matt, can you point to that suggests that that's anything other than a conspiracy that you know makes it seem realistic, feasible?
Well, first of all, just from interviewing people on the campaign trail, I started to hear that more and more in 2012. So the first presidential crash, there was suddenly a huge amount of discontent from people who would normally never think negatively about Wall Street, who were suddenly saying things like, how come they bailed out X company and I had to go into foreclosure, right? Why did that happen? Why was there this massive global central bank expenditure to save the financial system, which was guilty, by the way, of causing the crash? And why did I have to foot the bill, right? Like, why am I paying for the bailout and I'm not getting anything out of it. And you started to see this like harder edge to people when they talked about politicians. And I think the appeal of somebody like Trump wasn't so much that he was a real oppositional figure or that he had actual solutions, but that he identified what people were upset about. He was at least smart enough to feel in the audience where their frustrations were. When he saw vets in the crowd, he would say, "We have to do something about these endless wars because they're not getting us anywhere. They help, the Carlyle Group and Lockheed Martin, but they don't help you." He went after NATO, right? They'd say they don't pay their dues. Your taxes are going to pay for this stuff, but the other countries that we're protecting, they're not paying, and that stuff resonated, right? So he just went down the list of institutions, and again, we talked about this before. He was very much like a stand-up comic. He would go into the crowd and feel out what people were pissed about, and he would give them something. And that's why figures like Trump and even the hated Alex Jones, they had some traction with people, because what they were saying was there's this globalist effort to take away the things that you once had. They prioritize their own wealth. They have given up on the country. And all those messages have at least a little bit of truth to them, and therefore they resonate. I mean, how can you be an American worker who watched the factory that used to be in your town move to a place like China, while the United States gives most favored nation trading status to the Chinese, and then listen to a politician say, well, you should learn to code or whatever it is? Like, it just doesn't fly. You start to feel like they're not really working for you, that they're working for the people in Davos or something like that.
Well, it feels like that sometimes. It feels like that the kind of things that are discussed in, at a global level, that involves states, people, that involve big media, big tech representatives, that involve some of the most powerful interests in the world, powerful and public. And that one thing that I found interesting about the pandemic is that it obviously a uniformity of response to a degree sort of makes sense if you're trying to deal with a medical emergency that requires a universal response. But it was the kind of the economic convenience and expedience of that event, the wealth transfer that took place during that time, the introduction of the control of data, the ability to lock down a population. Our producer here, Gareth, who makes the content with us, said that prior to the pandemic, who, by the way, is not a person that's hysterical or prone to sort of conspiratorial thinking. I'm much more sympathetic to that. I'm much more of a kind of what I want to say. I like mythology. I like stories that galvanize people. I'm interested in truth, and I wouldn't convey anything that I didn't believe to be true. And frankly, I work with people that wouldn't allow it to happen anyway, thankfully. But he said, before the pandemic, if you wanted to control a social uprising, let alone a revolution, it would have required military and tanks on the street. Now you can control that from a laptop. You can shut down people's bank accounts. You can control people's information. You can see how this is being used to augment a social credit type society, and how we're already being sort of eased towards that. Even if it's not a malign intent, the state wants power. The corporate world wants profit. The media is aligned with both of those interests in ways that without a very deliberate, conscious effort, is going to be inertly carried towards the same outcomes and agenda. The same agenda, therefore, is pursued. And it seems to me that at this point, that saying those things are a conspiracy theory is unfair.
Yeah, I mean, it's beyond the point where you can say it's fantastical. It's certainly true that we now have issues that people look like, okay, let's just take the introduction of the idea of not serving somebody at a restaurant and that being a computerized uh, notion, right? Like you have to be registered. Um, that notion terrifies a lot of people because the applications of that are infinite. If you belong to the wrong kind of political movement, I mean, this is again what was so scary about the Canadian trucker situation was this idea that, oh, well, there is a mechanism by which we can turn off your ability to raise money for political action if we decide that it qualifies as threatening during this pandemic emergency. So that's what I think. A lot of people got very nervous about that with a lot of justice. You add to that the incredible amounts of obedience that they were able to whip up among the population about things like after it had been demonstrated that wasn't necessarily a thing that was going to help in any way. But it became a cultural marker, right? And people became, afraid to be seen as somebody who thinks differently. The pandemic, whether just fortuitous for people in power, or it was something that they had in the works, it certainly added to that feeling of paranoia. And then on top of that, there was the financial aspect where, just in the United States, we spent $4.6 trillion of Federal Reserve money, dumped that into the stock market, made lots and lots of people very, very wealthy. And now you see what's happening. We're pulling back, and the pain is all going to the people who are not in the financial services industry, don't know how to take advantage of those things, and the fortunes were made in the last couple of years, and again the wealth gap is going to grow the same way it grew after the 2008 bailouts.
Well, do you think I done well in that conversation? Was I smart as a whip? Was you proud of me? Do you feel a little bit better now? Do you feel you're in a better position to have a conversation about these complex issues? Do you feel more equipped? Do you feel like you know a few more facts? That it's not just an expression of an emotion? Like there must be something going on. There must be something going wrong because it feels like corruption to me. I can tell this isn't what representation through democracy is supposed to feel like. I can tell this isn't what being a human animal is supposed to feel like. Being an awakening soul is not meant to feel like this. We are trying our best to equip you with the facts. We're going to continue to try and do that. Let me know in the comments what we can do better to serve you. Give this video a thumbs up. Subscribe right now. Turn on the notification bell because it's the only way we can beat the algorithm, because let me tell you the way I see it. The algorithm is not your friend. Same way culture is not your friend. Listen, if you enjoyed this video, have a look at either one of these. They're both brilliant. Sign up to that mailing list right now. It's one click away. We'll be connected just like that. Click away. Get right in there. But more important than any of this stuff, and it's all important, stay free.